Hey everybody, how's it going? Josh here. So I'm back with another screenplay. This one is the fourth Flash one. Now I'm not gonna lie, I probably had like a lot of fun writing this. I know I had a lot of fun writing this because it's like 2100 words. But yeah, I hope you guys, stay for the whole thing, listen to it, listen to my other Flash ones. But if you want to go to the beginning, obviously start with Justice League because basically kind of spark notes time here. I had Barry Allen get his powers in the Justice League 1 screenplay. So check that one out. There is a lot of Wally in this one. There was a lot of Wally kind of in the last one too. But hopefully you guys like it. Obviously, if you know me, I'm a huge Wally fan. But with all that said and done, let's get right into it. So the movie starts with a few months after Flash 3, which was the last one I did, like Rogue's Revenge or something like that. And so it's around Christmas time now. With Wally holding Barry's dead body in his arms and with a shadowy figure speeding away while his laugh echoes in the distance. Now, at this moment, Wally then wakes up, so this was just a nightmare, before speeding off to clear his head. We then transition to the next day, and Barry's working on a new case before his wife Iris arrives to take him out to lunch. Now, he goes to a nearby diner before Barry is contacted by Dr. Elias with an alert that there is basically Speed Force energy being detected across the city, but it doesn't belong to Barry and it doesn't belong to Wally. Now, if you don't know who Dr. Elias is, by the way, basically think Harrison Wells, but good. He's based off Dr. Elias in the New 52 comics, like the first New 52 Flash run, because I started these before the CW show actually started, believe it or not. They're that old. So anyways, Barry goes to check it out while Iris contacts Wally to ask him to meet up with Barry to help Barry out in case, it goes south essentially. Barry, arrives at the detected spot to find that it's an old warehouse that Star Labs used to own a few years back for storage needs. Barry speeds across the warehouse before seeing a shadowy figure going into a box. Barry asks who the person is, but instead of a response, sees the person dash off with black lightning, which obviously piques Barry's interest. Barry follows the mystery person until the figure suddenly appears not in front of Barry anymore, but besides Barry, whispering Barry Allen will die before disappearing in a loud boom that blows Barry back into the lake, that he was running on essentially. So Barry's able to get back on the shore where Wally meets him, and they both go to Star Labs. Wally mentions that there's something he wants to talk to Barry about, but once they get to Star Labs, they basically just go over the readings Dr. Elias had, and Barry mentions that the mystery person said his name, making it seem as if maybe this person knows them, maybe they know the person, but the only person they know of besides Barry and Wally with Speed Force abilities, or at least speedster abilities with the Speed Force, is Eobard Thawne, who's in Argus custody and only had his powers thanks to the suit he wore. And without the suit, which they basically destroyed in the last one, there's no way he has Speed Force abilities, so they're very confused on what's going on. Barry says he'll visit Thawne though just in case before telling Dr. Elias that the Speed Force lightning he saw was black. Dr. Elias does mention that's odd because Barry and Wally have yellow lightning, and Thawne had red lightning, but he'll look into it. So Barry then speeds off, leaving Wally with Dr. Elias. Wally mentions, he kind of has a bad feeling about this new speedster that's shown up, to which Dr. Elias asks him why. Wally says he had a dream, Barry getting killed by this mystery speedster that fits the description of the same speedster that, Barry had a run-in with today. Wally then asks, what they really know about the Speed Force, because Wally's thinking, maybe this is like the personified version of the Speed Force. Maybe it's like the Black Flash, like the death version, the death embodiment of the Speed Force. So Wally's kind of like not freaking out, but he's trying to really figure out what's going on here because his dream really it felt very real to him, as if it actually happened or it will happen, and he obviously doesn't want that to happen. So while that's going on, Samuel Scudder, aka the Mirror Master, arrives. Now, if you pay attention to my last screenplay, you know that Mirror Master was stuck in the mirror dimension. At the end, Barry promised that he will find a way with the resources at Star Labs, all that stuff, he will find a way to, save, Samuel Scudder, because Samuel Scudder wasn't really that much of a bad guy. He was just in a position where he had to help Captain Cold in order to leave the mirror dimension, essentially. If you want to know more about that, listen to my last Flash screenplay. What this basically means is Barry kept his promise true, and now Samuel Scudder is an ally of Team Flash, a member of Team Flash, and also freed from his dependency of the mirror dimension. So he can still go there, he just isn't bound to that dimension anymore, thanks to, obviously, Team Flash and Star Labs. So he tells Wally that he'll help him exploit the Speed Force because of his knowledge in high energy and theoretical physics, along with obviously his powers, which is more or less dimensional crossing. Wally then heads with him into a room. They start talking and working on, theories and stuff like that on this new speedster, while at an undisclosed location, Barry sits face to face with Thawne. Now, Thawne obviously has nothing but hatred for Barry still at this point, and they kind of don't say a word to each other. They're just kind of looking at each other really, it's really tense. And Thawne breaks the silence asking Barry, I should say, how his mother is doing. Which obviously hits a nerve with Barry, but Barry tries staying focused, asking Thawne if he knew of other speedsters besides them before he came to the present day and the events of the second Flash screenplay took place. So at this moment, Thawne responds that of course there's other speedsters besides them in history. There's speedsters from other universes. There's speedsters in the future. Most of the time they kind of stay to themselves. They stay in their own lane, so to speak, because, most people have the common knowledge to not screw with time, not screw with other universes too much when they're speedsters, because they know that basically the effects would be catastrophic. So basically people know not to cross the streams, so to speak, due to the damage that could happen to time and space. Thawne asks why Barry had asked such a peculiar question, to which Barry says that a speedster appeared today. However, it had black lightning instead of the usual yellow or Thawne's red, which, kind of shocks Thawne. Thawne then has this odd look on his face where he may know what's going on, but he doesn't mention it, with actually a little bit of fear in him. So he tells Barry that if he values his life, he would stay away from that speedster and hope that speedster doesn't have anything against Barry personally, any vendetta, essentially, because a speedster's black lightning is far more dangerous than a speedster with yellow lightning like Barry or Wally, or a speedster with red lightning like himself. Eobard then asks his guards to return him to his cell as he has nothing more to say to Barry, before cryptically telling Barry he should, stay away or else it could be his life. So later that night at dinner, Iris asks Barry about the speedster, because obviously Barry left their lunch date early to deal with the speedster, and Barry says he doesn't know much about it, but Thawne seemed actually afraid of this speedster, which says a lot due to the fact that Thawne, out of everybody, has the most knowledge about the Speed Force and speedsters in general, due to how much he studied it in the future. Iris says that, she'll do the best she can, although it may not be much, after she finishes her front page story for the weekend. Barry and Iris then, they talk about several other topics that married couples, talk about before heading to bed, although we see Wally on the rooftop as if he's waiting for something. Wally eventually decides to leave, but around that time he gets a headache, and, he also notices a figure dashing around the houses in the area. Wally then speeds off to follow the figure before catching its attention, seeing what the figure really is, which is a humanoid person. Which appears to be a speedster instead of a demonic thing or anything of that sort. The figure almost instantaneously appears before Wally once Wally catches his attention, and delivers a powerful gut punch to Wally, sending him into a nearby house garage, knocking him out cold. The shadowy figure then disappears, and when Wally comes to, he's at Star Labs with Dr. Elias, Barry, Iris, and Samuel looking over him. Now, Dr. Elias says that when his vitals went down, because they all have kind of watches basically that monitor their vitals in case, something happens, they automatically, went to Wally, picked him up so no one would find him, but also brought him to Star Labs so while he could heal safely, but also hopefully heal correctly in case anything's broken or things like that they would have to manually maybe go in and fix before his body, heals it wrong. So Wally, he says he thinks he knows who it is, claiming that it would be Thawne, due to the person's like height, build, just humanoid appearance in general. Barry says it's impossible as he locked Thawne up and even checked on Thawne to make sure he stayed locked up. But Wally insists that it's the only way it's the only person that they know that has connection to the Speed Force that would know Barry's basic identity, since this person was speeding around Barry's neighborhood, seemingly looking for Barry. Wally also insists that he seems to share a weird connection with the speedster, which he thinks is because Eobard's suit is partially responsible for him getting his Speed Force connection, with the headache and all that stuff. Dr. Elliot says it's possible. However, he thinks he made a breakthrough with Samuel on analyzing the Speed Force energy and the different color hues with the lightning. So Barry and Wally, listen to him as they do their kind of mini presentation of sorts. And Dr. Elliot says that he believes yellow lightning is a natural connection to the Speed Force, while red is an artificial connection. He also theorizes that as you become faster or you gain a greater connection to the Speed Force, your lightning will appear, in a lighter color, will reach colors of like blue, and then eventually the apex of it would be white lightning. As your speed approaches light speed, kind of in the vein of the blue shift kind of stuff, which I believe the actual DC Cinematic Universe, DC Extended Universe, I believe they're doing that with the Flash, actually, which is actually, it's cool they're going into that. So Barry says that's a good theory and all, but what about black lightning, which nobody seems to have an answer to. But then at that moment they get an alert from Amanda Waller that a speedster broke into one of their Argus facilities and tried killing Eobard Thawne, but luckily didn't proceed to do so, and instead left Eobard Thawne in a heavily kind of beaten state, essentially putting him in a coma. So Barry and Wally immediately speed off to the facility to check it out, hopefully catch the speedster, while Dr. Elias and Samuel work on a plan to capture the speedster, just in case Barry and Wally aren't able to stop him as they leave for the facility. When they get to the facility, it ends up being too late, but Barry is able to use his forensic skills to swipe for any samples. He gets one and brings it back for testing, although the results don't match anyone in Central City. Barry then gives a sample to Wally to ask Wally to check in Keystone, because Wally goes to school in Keystone, while Barry also says he'll bring a sample to the Watchtower, hopefully that'll help out, and also to bring a sample to Argus. Basically the way I have it working out is that Barry's going to go to the Watchtower and try there. Wally's going to go to Keystone, but he's also going to go to Argus and use their facilities, and hopefully they can, between all those basically resources, they could figure out whose DNA sample is the new speedster, essentially. They're doing all that, Wally and Samuel are also working on their theories of a new speedster, while Wally comes up with the idea of, because when Barry first fought Eobard Thawne, Wally ended up getting sent into the future, like Eobard's future timeline. And Wally has the idea of doing that again, because maybe they can use Eobard's books, his notes, stuff like that, to get more knowledge on the Speed Force and maybe figure out like how this person has black lightning, maybe weaknesses it might have, basically just more information in general, because their knowledge on the Speed Force is heavily limited, especially now that Eobard Thawne, which is the closest thing they have to an encyclopedia for the Speed Force, is in a coma. Because obviously that doesn't really help you out if the dude that has all the info is in a coma. So Samuel agrees to help him build, the tech that's needed. Dr. Elias also helps build the tech that's needed while Barry's at the Watchtower, and they're able to get it and essentially send Wally to the 23rd century for the second time. Once he's there, Wally goes to the Thawne estate, just like he went to in the second Flash screenplay, and he's kind of going through stuff, but not really finding anything that is exactly talking about the Speed Force. He's more finding kind of the books that Thawne read to develop his knowledge and theories about the Speed Force that was like early on. So Wally's looking, while he also has the sample. So while he has the sample, he decides to quickly run it to a facility that he thinks will have the tech, basically Future Star Labs, and he puts it in their kind of thing and lets the program run to hopefully find a DNA match while he goes back to Eobard Thawne's estate. The reason why he's doing that, you might be thinking, why would he bring a DNA sample to a future Star Labs? Well, the reason why is because it can go through a directory, essentially, of everybody that's been a citizen in Central City. So if you were a citizen a few hundred years ago or now, if there's a DNA sample of you on record, you will be found in that system. So that's basically the mindset Wally has. So at Eobard Thawne's estate, he's searching for more stuff while he kind of stumbles upon a college kid named Hunter that claims to be Thawne's student in studying the Speed Force. Wally asks him if he can tell him everything he knows about the Speed Force, to which Hunter points to all the books Eobard has, which are actually his Speed Force notes and all that stuff. So Wally quickly speed reads all of that, which catches Hunter's attention, and Hunter asks him, basically, what's your name? Wally introduces himself, says he's Wally, he's not from around here, he's just visiting, yada 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 yada, making up fake reasons to be there. To which Hunter says he knows all about Wally, because while Eobard was focused and obsessed with Barry, Hunter focused on Wally, knowing that Wally was the true master of the Speed Force, and all that stuff, which obviously catches Wally's attention. Wally then quickly questions Hunter a little bit on what he's talking about, the true master of the Speed Force, to which Hunter says that when Wally becomes the Flash in Wally's future, when he becomes the Flash, he is able to achieve this the apex of the Speed Force, the true potential of the Speed Force that currently neither him or Barry have reached, and that Barry will never reach. Hunter keeps kind of talking more and more about it, which kind of weirds Wally out a little bit. Hunter says stuff like, although Barry was the first Flash, Wally was the true Flash, claiming that Thawne's biggest flaw, besides leaving, for the past without Hunter, was his focus on Barry instead of Wally. Because if maybe he focused on Wally, he would have really cracked the secrets of the Speed Force, besides simply focusing on Barry and making, science and research and all that stuff into a personal vendetta. Wally kind of gets an idea that this dude knows a lot about the Speed Force, with Hunter talking and talking and talking, and will probably give it up to him because he seems to, be very invested in Wally. So Wally, asks him about the Speed Force colors, to which Hunter starts talking about them, but he doesn't mention the black Speed Force lightning. So Wally then asks him, what he knows about black Speed Force lightning, to which Hunter responds that, the apex Speed Force lightning color, or the hue, I guess, is white, which means that the user has basically access the apex potential of the Speed Force you can access without becoming a part of the Speed Force, which, amongst, all these different abilities, the abilities unique to that person would be, theoretically able to speed time up. So basically, while some speedsters simply, speed across time, you would be able to increase time. You'd basically have full control over time, theoretically. That's what Hunter's saying, which is basically you'd be more than a speedster. You'd be manipulating time itself instead of simply accessing, time manipulation. If that makes any sense. Wally asks if anything like that's possible, to which Hunter says, of course, but that's where the black lightning comes in. Because basically, just like the red lightning was an artificial connection, essentially the opposite of the yellow lightning, black lightning is essentially the opposite of the white lightning. So the black lightning is an artificial connection, but instead of, forwarding time, speeding up time, it allows you to slow down, if not freeze time, which is, essentially it's an artificial version of time manipulation. Instead of just simply accessing the Speed Force, you are manipulating time through the Speed Force. In a similar vein of what white lightning is, except for white lightning is doing it with a natural connection to the Speed Force. It's all very confusing. I'm basing everything I'm saying, by the way, off of how the actual Speed Force lightning colors work in the DC, mythology, the DC canon. So I'm not just making all this stuff up and everything for all the people listening to this. At this moment, Wally kind of gets a beeper that, his results are up, and he speeds off to the Future Star Labs, where he gets the information finding out that the DNA sample belongs to Hunter Zolomon. And then Wally speeds back, asking Hunter what his last name is. Hunter then says Hunter Zolomon in kind of a sinister-like tone before Wally asks him if he is responsible for, the figure that's been, basically in the present day, causing all the issues. To which Hunter then, kind of smiles sinisterly and reveals himself to be that shadowy figure, having a suit emerge on him a lot more advanced than Eobard Thawne's suit was. He then says that in order for Wally to become the speedster he's meant to be, the apex speedster with the white lightning, which he'll need to save the universe in the future, Barry must die, as Wally didn't have that push, didn't have that ability to, become more than Barry until Barry was no more in the equation, essentially. So this kind of shocks Barry, this kind of shocks Wally, and Wally tries, stopping whatever, Hunter's doing, because Hunter's just kind of discharging black lightning at this point, but Hunter dodges Wally and then says zoom before he just disappears, presumably going to the past. In the present day, Iris wakes up, Barry, it's the next day, Barry is still in bed, it is essentially Christmas Eve. And, Iris is about to make coffee, but when she enters the kitchen, however, Hunter's there, sparking black lightning everywhere. Iris tries yelling for Barry, but Hunter quickly covers her mouth, telling her that if she screams or tries screaming again, he'll kill her, and then reverse time and do it over and over and over again until he gets bored. He then disappears, emerging in their bedroom where Barry is still sleeping. He starts vibrating his hand, ready to basically put it in Barry's body and then explode Barry, but when he tries doing so, he finds out it's just a mirror duplicate created by Samuel, aka the Mirror Master. At this moment, Barry appears with a gun basically from Dr. Elias, and he blasts Hunter with it, knocking him out, and then Barry quickly transports him to a special cell in an Argus facility. Now, at the cell, when Hunter comes to a few hours later, he kind of smiles and laughs a little bit, saying that he has Barry right where he wanted him, as now there's no question to if that's the real Barry, as before he was expecting some sort of trap, because he knows Barry isn't an idiot. Barry asks Hunter about, what's going on. Obviously Barry doesn't know this is, who Hunter is, so that's obviously one of the first questions he asks. But he also asks what he's doing, and, all that stuff, and Hunter essentially responds that, he wants Wally to be able to be the best Flash he can be, but in order to do so, Wally must be the only Flash, and he's not even a Flash yet, as Barry is still the Flash. So in order for Wally to become the Flash and then become the best Flash possible, in order for Wally to, Barry must be, removed from the equation. Kind of what he's told Wally earlier. Barry says that Wally's his own speedster, as currently Wally uses the codename Impulse, and he says that Wally's his own speedster. He doesn't need to be the Flash. To which kind of messes with Hunter a little bit. That kind of that's kind of like a sore spot for Hunter, I guess. So Hunter kind of gets turned by that. He kind of gets murked by it, angered a little bit, and he starts sparking black lightning. Wally then tells Barry that he made a mistake, as obviously his suit got stripped from him, but unlike Eobard Thawne, his powers aren't bound by the suit. If anything, the suit simply helps him regulate his powers due to, the kind of unstable nature of the black lightning. Hunter then, kind of with a smile, makes a zoom noise, and with that zoom, he breaks out of his cell, kills every guard and every prisoner in the facility. Bear in mind, this is a different facility than the one Eobard Thawne was in. He's not even in a facility anymore. He's more of in a hospital at this point. So Hunter Zolomon kills everybody before, standing before Barry and just kind of laughing, telling Barry that he's a fool and he's an idiot. And with his death, Hunter will finally be able to make Wally the speedster he's meant to be. Wally at this point arrives, back into the present day, which, surprises Hunter and impresses him a little bit. He tells Wally he's too late, to stop, what's happening. Wally tries telling Hunter to stop again, but Hunter just simply says that he hasn't reached his peak yet, and with Barry's death, he will. So Barry tries restraining Hunter, but Hunter simply gets behind Barry and stabs him with his hand really quickly, killing Barry, essentially, and recreating the scene that Barry had, or not that Barry had, that recreating the scene that Wally had in his nightmare. At this moment, Hunter says that, he'll pay Aunt Iris a visit before, zooming off, essentially, in a burst of black lightning. Wally holds Barry, asking him to hold on, that he'll get him help and stuff like that. But Barry says he needs to go save Iris, and that he believes in Wally, before giving Wally his speed, which turns Wally's speed bluish and then white. And with this new power now, this new speed, Wally disappears in a burst of light, reappearing as if he teleported to Iris in a fraction of a second before Hunter appears, punching him with enough force, and I guess with enough velocity, you could say you're using enough velocity to generate enough force that Hunter goes flying across the city, across Central City, kind of skidding across the lake, all that stuff. Like, it'd be a really cool scene, I should say, to see on in a movie with a great budget and stuff like that. With the right director, obviously, because the wrong director could just be not creative at all and really kind of screw everything up, a la Michael Bay. But anyways, moving on from that. After that, Wally with his newfound, speed, he, in a burst of white light, takes Iris and Barry to Star Labs. So Dr. Elias and Samuel immediately try saving Barry while Wally returns to fight Hunter. Hunter tries freezing the time around them while Wally with his speed speeds it up, which causes some time distortions around them while they're fighting. Although they're fighting so fast to the common person that you can't even see them. So there's just a bunch of time distortions going around the city. No one knows what's going on. No one really even notices them, honestly, because they're fighting so fast. There's very few people that are noticing the disturbances, and they're kind of just going about their day anyways, because they're probably thinking in their mind, oh, it's just the Flash doing, Flash stuff, essentially. While that's going on, they're punching each other, all this stuff, and Hunter tries telling Wally again, he's just trying to help him, but Wally insists he's just crazy like Eobard is, or Eobard was and still is. Hunter tries telling Wally, though, that there's a great evil coming that will threaten the universe, that Barry wasn't fast enough to stop, and Wally can be fast enough to stop. He simply just needs a push. Essentially, Hunter's saying he's the good guy in all of this, that there's a bigger picture involved. Wally simply needs to look at it. Wally doesn't believe Hunter at all, though, and says that Hunter's just crazy before landing a kick on Hunter that sends him around the world, actually. So it's think kind of like the infinite mass punch, but with a kick. And it sends him around the whole world, appearing before Wally again, which Wally simply at this point clotheslines Hunter. Now with this, Hunter more or less is kind of done for the count. He's kind of down for the count after that, but he gets back up anyways and keeps fighting while now trying to kill civilians during the fight in both Central City and Keystone in order to push Wally further. Now, eventually Wally has enough of Hunter, and Hunter's shenanigans, Hunter's actions, and decides to try a Speed Force technique that he read about in Eobard's notes, but, obviously hasn't tried yet. And that is, and the technique is putting Hunter in a headlock and then focusing the Speed Force energy on both him and Hunter, which releases a surge of Speed Force energy from them, which kind of in a big bright light, Wally ends up on the ground, exhausted and tired. But when he looks up, Hunter is frozen in a place of basically living death. So essentially, for everyone that knows about the Flash mythos, Wally basically stole Hunter's speed, all of his speed. So Hunter can't move. So he is kind of in a state of living death at this point. Wally then takes Hunter to Star Labs, where he has Samuel open a portal to the mirror dimension, which, is where they put Hunter at, since they don't trust Hunter in any sort of facility whatsoever due to just the type of danger he poses. Wally then focuses his Speed Force energy on Barry, seemingly healing Barry, while also giving the appearance of him reversing time around Barry, making it as if he was never stabbed. When Wally finishes this, his lightning reverts to a yellow kind of hue, although there are still hints of white in it. Barry wakes up asking what happened, to which everyone kind of catches him up on it. And the film ends, with them all celebrating Christmas together the next day. Barry, Iris, and Wally. And when Barry opens his gift, it's a pregnancy test thing that's positive. So Iris is pregnant. And that's where it ends. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really wasn't initially planning to do Hunter Zolomon. Wow, this was long. Jeez. I wasn't initially planning on doing Hunter Zolomon. It just kind of all fell to place while I was writing it. Hope you guys like it. There's not a lot of these left. So comment below your guys' thoughts and all that good stuff. And I'll see you guys later.